Okay, you tell me if you think this makes sense. The line is out for Georgia and Alabama. We've seen this line trickle around a little bit here and there. Georgia's a 5.5 point favorite over Alabama as we are a week away from this game. This game has been as low as 3.5. It's been as high as 5.5. I think it could touch 6. We'll see. Georgia is 15-5 as a touchdown or fewer points, 7 points or fewer favorite under Kirby Smart. And, one of those losses was to Alabama in this game. One of those wins was against Alabama in the national championship game. So they've split. Usually you win about 75% of these games. Well, actually, it's a little bit lower than that, depending on the team. But for Georgia, 75% of the time with Kirby Smart, they've won this type of game. One of the losses was to Georgia Tech in 16. One was to LSU. One was to Alabama. One was to Florida in 2020. The LSU game was in 2018 in Baton Rouge. And there was another game. I can't quite remember what that was off the top of my head. I can look it up and tell y'all later. But 5.5 is, for me, there are multiple points at which a betting line is, what I would call there's significance. Over 20, over 14, 10 and over, 7 and over, and then kind of 3 and over. Anything under 3, it's not a toss-up, statistically speaking. It's close to that. Once you're hovering around 5, you are in the category of, yeah, you should win this game. Like, if the other team wins, it's an upset, but, and it is an upset, but it's not like some, we're tearing the goalpost down upset. It's a surprise, a little bit of a surprise. And there's not a lot, listen, I can't wait for the Georgia folks to talk about how nobody's picking them to win this game. Look, Alabama is definitely the team that is not being picked to win this game. Just listen to people talk. There's they're a 5.5 point dog or a 5 point dog. It depends on what. By the way, it depends on where you're at. I mean, one app or one betting house has it at 5.5. One has it at 5. So you can choose to you can kind of get mad about it, and once we get sponsored by a company, we'll use their number exclusively. But right now, this thing is kind of at that level, 5 or 5.5, and that's the hook is someone else's problem, as Blues Traveler would say. But I'm looking at 2 reputable places. One is 5, one is 5.5. So there's just not much difference there as far as what I'm talking about. But I think that's about where it should be. To be honest with you, man, I think that this game. And some of it's dipping down to 4.5 in some play. It just depends on where you want to get it. But anywhere from 4.5 to 5 is a notable, number. And I think that there's not a ton of difference between 4.5 and 5.5, whereas there's a pretty big difference between 5.5 and 7 for me. And it just the way that it is. I may have been looking at some older numbers a second ago, which is possible when I was talking about the 4.5. Now let me get to a more updated screen here, and we can take it from there. But I think this is about right. I mean, I think Bama is it's not 4.5. So sorry about that. That was some old data. It's 5 or higher. Generally speaking, everywhere. So I'm not looking at everything. I'm not a degenerate like some of y'all. I mean that in a loving way, by the way. But you got, Carson Beck's knocking on the door of 3,500 yards for this season. That's a lot. You got Jalen Milroe out here throwing touchdown passes as time expires on your arch rival. I mean, it's rough out there, y'all. It is rough out there. I've got a great offer for you. I've only got a few of these remaining. It's a Stetson Bennett signed Double Dawgs, exclusive obviously to Dawg Post. I don't have a lot of these. Make sure you're taking advantage. The link is right down below. And when I run out of those, I run out of those. So I mean, we can't do it without support from y'all. Y'all supporting our buddies at EcoPoly. I'll talk more about them during the week and some of the fabulous offers they've got right now. But I want you to take advantage of the Double Dawgs that I've got, because when they're gone, they're gone. So but I think these tickets are going for 3 times what every other championship game is going for. Double. Texas Oklahoma State is about 150, so they're going for double everybody else. But when you look at these, look, Oregon is a 9.5, 8.5, 9.5 point favorite over UW. I think that's right. Texas is a 14-point favorite over a really schizophrenic Oklahoma State. The Dogs 5.5 over Alabama. Tulane 4 over SMU, trying to sneak into the New Year's 6 for Tulane again. Michigan's a 23-point favorite over Iowa, so basically they're playing Georgia Tech in their conference championship game, and then this line keeps getting knocked down, which is Florida State's only a field goal favorite over Louisville. I mean that's gotten really beaten down, and tells you what everybody thinks about the Noles right now. I think Georgia people want Georgia to win. Okay. Once you do that, I think you're cheering as hard as you can for Florida State. That is a hobbled team right now. If they're undefeated, they are not one of the best 4 teams in the country. They may well be undefeated, but they're not one of the best 4 teams in the country. I think Georgia would really love to play Florida State in the Sugar Bowl. If they don't, they'll probably get Texas if they win. And I think the winner of Georgia-Alabama is playing in the Sugar Bowl. I think the question is, who are they playing in the Sugar Bowl? And, there are scenarios where Alabama could be the number 1 seed, but there's like complete and total. I mean, Texas would have to lose. I know there's no scenario where Alabama could be the 1, because Oregon and Washington would be the 1, but they'd play in the Rose Bowl. And, so there's Michigan is going to play in the Rose. And if they're not the 1 somehow, then Oregon and UW will play in the Rose. So Georgia's going to play in the Sugar Bowl if they win. Alabama's going to play in the Sugar Bowl if they win and they get their choice. But I think just because of them being, unless they're the 4, they will be in New Orleans for that game. Just seeing here now, Alabama's leading rusher Jace McClellan is questionable to play against Georgia. He got hurt in the 4th quarter. Here's what Nick said. He said he's had a little foot injury all year. He tweaked it in the game, so it'll probably be day-to-day this week. I can't tell you how much progress he'll make. Probably in the next 48 hours will tell us whether he'll make the kind of progress he needs to be able to practice and play in the game. So there's a lot. Brock Bowers did not play in this game. Dominic Lovett did not play against Georgia Tech, if I'm not mistaken. It was either or Dominic. I think scored a touchdown, so it would be Dominic did not play in this game. Ladd, Dominic, Brock, Tate Ratledge. There were 5 starters that were out on the offensive side of the ball. That's a lot. And it didn't seem like Georgia missed a lot. I mean, they scored 31 points. It probably should have been 43. I mean, the officiating was rough last night, and I don't do that, but there were some curious situations. I need to watch the replay on the Dylan Bell thing. As a photographer, still photos don't always get it, but it was clear he had control of the ball and a foot in bound. What I don't know, having not seen it yet, was did he juggle it enough? 2 people that I know who are not crazy people thought that they made the wrong call reversing that. Had it been an incompletion, perhaps it would have stayed an incompletion, but they ruled it as a catch. So you're not going to be dealing with that. The SEC officials, as much as y'all want to give them grief, and everybody does, the SEC officials are, I would say, notably and noticeably better than everybody else in the country. So there's that. And you saw that in Atlanta on Saturday night. But I think the injuries are going to matter. If Alabama does not have its leading rusher, then that could mean that they're leaning on Jalen Milroe to do even more. And that's just not a situation that you really want to be in. I mean, I remember in the national championship game, they were banged up there too, Bama. Clearly, the wide receiver discussion and all that stuff. But McClellan's gone for 166 carries, 803 yards. That's a lot. Jalen Milroe scored 12 rushing touchdowns. But if you suddenly take him away, they still have Williams, who is quite good. Justice Hayes, who is very good, I will tell you, Jam Miller. They've got guys. They just don't have, at that point, their workhorse. It would shift to Williams, you would think. My assumption is that McClellan will probably try to play or, go for it. I just don't know if he'll be able to really go the whole time. That's different. Obviously, Jermaine is their number one receiver, 750 yards. Kirby said on Sunday that he'd not seen a lot of film on him. He said, let me tell you exactly what he said. He said he hasn't watched enough tape on him this year, but he knows he's a talented player. I mean, clearly, Jermaine played for Kirby, so they know what's going on there. But this is an important game. Clearly, that the Dogs are 5.5 point favorite. That's not insignificant. I love the comments explaining to me, someone who's done this for 23 years, that this doesn't mean anything. Well, then okay, don't watch the video. It's okay. It doesn't mean anything. It's something to talk about, though. There's a favorite and there's an underdog. There always is in sports. There can be in life, too. But if Georgia wants to come in with this underdog stuff, they're going to have to wait for another day. If you want to be a champion, you have to have the burden of expectation. It's on you. And when Kirby talked about Billie Jean King, pressure is a privilege. Well, here's your pressure, right? And, Georgia should be favored in this game. They should win this game. Now they got to go do it. And I can talk with the best of them, but they got to go do it. It's not up to me, and it's not up to y'all. Y'all actually do have an influence on this game, whether you're an Alabama fan or a Georgia fan, because you can scream and yell, and that does matter. But, for everything that's said ahead of time, it's irrelevant. It's one thing that I was talking to Carson about, Carson Beck, Georgia's starting quarterback, after the game in Atlanta was, how do you treat this just as like a normal game? Because it's a bigger game than a normal game. They're not playing, Ball State, but you still got to go out and, keep it in the fairway. You still got to go and complete passes. You still got to do everything that you need to do. You have to do those things. You have to prepare the right way. You have to get healthy if you're Brock and Ladd, who I fully expect them to play. We'll see, but I fully expect. Brock was dressed out. Tate Ratledge was dressed out. Ladd was not. So, but it did look like pregame that Brock was not as comfortable as he had been in the past. So there's stuff, but when you have a 2-week period where you're not playing, you can still exert yourself in practice and not be great, at least in practice, so you can shut it down. And I think that's what they did Saturday night. They said, hey, listen, man, we're not taking any risks. If you're not really a go, then let's not do it. And they didn't. So I think Georgia, 5.5. I think if it were lower than that, I'm just not sure I would agree with it. I guess you could say. The odds, I do want to do this one last thing. We're talking about odds, because this is always very curious to me. Right now, Alabama's odds of making the playoff, according to some odds makers, is plus 245. So what does that mean? What is the math there? What does that actually mean? That gives them about a 30, well, a little bit, yeah, I'm just going to call it 30. A 30% chance of getting into the playoff. And obviously the no is the complete opposite of that. Georgia, they are at minus 520 to get into the playoffs. So that's at 84%. Very high to get in. Michigan's got to be through the roof. Yeah, it's negative 6,000. So that's 98%. Michigan got into the playoff the other day. That's just all there is to it. I'm curious. Yeah, and then, Ohio State's at 7% to make it. I wonder what the odds are for Texas here to get in there, plus 122. So they are right on top of 50%. That's 45% that Texas will not get in. And let me get the Noles here. Where did they go? I can't find. How can I not see Florida State? Surely they're taking. Well, they might not be taking bets on that because. Oh, no, there they are. Florida State negative 168 to get in. So a slight favorite, 62% to get in. So basically everybody's saying, hey man, if you win your game, and that 5, by the way, that 5%, I mean, that 5-point line um, is somewhere around a 68-ish% chance of winning the game based on what's happened in the past. So, for Georgia, it's a little higher in that threshold, but it's 65, 66, 67% chance of winning the game. So that's I think that's about right. I think Georgia is gonna have to not play well and in order to not get in. But I just have seen what they've done after they don't play great. They didn't play great in Atlanta. It was probably Carson's worst game of the season. It was the Vanderbilt game. I think it's the Tech game now. But when you're running for 300 yards almost, there's no reason to sit around and throw it. So I don't know. But Georgia's a 5-point favorite over Bama. What do you think? Tell me down below.